Chapter 26 of The Haunted Island by E.H. Visiak. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Ben Tucker. Chapter 26. The Treasure Chamber. There passed some 16 days, in which happened nothing remarkable, nor learnt I in that time anything more of the mysteries of the island. Ambrose could, or would, tell me nothing. Indeed, he was become so taciturn and out of humour that scarce he spoke to me ever at all. And then came the day when I hit upon the secret path over the morass. That there was such a pass, and that it conducted to something remarkable, I had from the first received a persuasion. But though in several visits to the morass I had sounded the marge of it well nigh all round, in compass about 6 miles, I could never come at it. And no wonder, for thus the thing was revealed to me. I had come to the place in the afternoon of that day. Of a morning I still wrought in the cloisters, and was working along in a maze of mangrove trees, when close by me a young kid leaped from the wood, and went bounding along upon the morass as if upon perfectly firm ground. I was surprised, but when I thrust my stick upon the slough at the point where I thought the creature lighted, and the ground did yield as soft as anywhere else, I stood like one perfectly dumbfounded. However, I essayed again, thrusting a little farther forth, and this time found firm, solid ground. I tried to the right hand and to the left, but in both places found swamp. Here, at this very point, then, began the secret path across the morass. But what a piece of cunning it was! Or rather, perhaps, how wondrous was nature's cunning herein subservient to man's! However, I stayed not to wonder, but having looked carefully round to make sure that none was near, sprang boldly forth upon the path, and began warily to tread it, feeling out before me with my staff. It held good, and I came safe to the other side, where thick fern trees grew in the skirts of woods. Setting up my staff to mark the place, I entered the woods, coming soon to a delicious little green hollow. The ground was glossy green moss. In the midst it was all withered in a square piece. "Oh ho," said I, looking on it, I think what this means." For I recalled the withered patch of moss above the cloisters, and stooping down, I felt about the roots of it. It proved as I expected. The moss adhered to the iron lid of a trap door. I found the spring and pressed it, and the contrivance slowly opened. Now, during my stay on the island I had furnished myself with, and carried always about with me, the material for contriving matches, namely, a good length of dead cocoa fibre, steeped in oil and dried in the sun. Accordingly, having cut a stick and broken it in twain, I bound some of my fibre about the ends of both pieces. I set one of my matches upright in the pocket of my coat, lest I should want it, and having kindled the other with my flint and steel, I held it down into the pit. The match burnt brightly, which told me the air was wholesome, so I set my foot upon the ladder within, and having the lighted match in my hand, began to descend. I reached the base, to find myself in a great well, or cylindrical shaft, the walls of which were clay hardened with fire. I looked for a tunnel or passage leading off from the place, but in vain. I was in the act of mounting the ladder in despair of making any discovery, when I spied a tiny knob of brass on the wall. To this I set my finger, and pressed it. Immediately a door flew open in the wall, revealing the dark arched orifice of a passage. I ventured within. My matchlight shone flickering upon bare clay walls at first, but when I was gotten a little way I near dropped the torch, startled at what I suddenly beheld. For heaped up in a medley before me was a great vast treasure, candlesticks and flagons, and jewelled sword hilts, and plate, and bars of gold, half sunk in jewels without number and without price, some of them being set in beautiful ornaments, but the most part loose, and many uncut and unpolished as they had been taken up out of the earth. I stood at gaze, whilst diamonds, opals, and emeralds gleamed and flashed in the matchlight, like rainbowed lightning. Suddenly a dreadful fear seized hold on me, and I dropped the match, which flickered for a moment and went out. A ghostly, clucking, Laughter had sounded through the passage. For a moment there was silence while I stood quaking, and then I knew who was with me in that secret place.
"Are you then come as a robber?"
came the mocking voice of Dr. Coppicus.
"Wouldst despoil me of my wretched dole, the scanty savings and substance of my old age? What, shall the young tread down the aged, the strong and lusty trample upon the infirm?"
"I have taken nothing," said I in a quavering voice.
"So, and are they worth taking, think you?"
I answered that it was an incalculable treasure.
"So, and what could it buy you?" said he. "Love, wisdom, freedom, power?"
I replied that it could buy none of these.
"What then, I'll tell you. Shadows, houses and lands, shadow, luxury, shadow, domination, shadow, shadows, 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 vanity, trouble, and vexation of spirit. Set your heart on shadow, and become shadow. I tell you, my lad," added he, with passion in his voice and deep despair, "I tell you that if—"
He ceased, and there was silence, a hollow and throbbing silence, like the pulse of the darkness. Then the doctor spoke again.
"How came you here?"
said he. I told him how I had found the path across the morass.
"It remains," said he, "for you to die. And yet—"
He touched a knob upon the wall, and immediately my sight was dazzled with the bright white light which flooded the passage.
"Come forth,"
said the doctor. I obeyed, trembling, and stood with him in the cylindrical chamber. I looked up, and the great white rugged face came into my vision and filled it, but I could not endure his piercing gaze, which searched into my soul.
"I am not willing to have you put to death," said he at last. "Nay, look on me. Lo, your life is in my hands, and I spare it. You have transgressed my weightiest command, and I pardon you. Only swear to me that you will not divulge to any man the secret of the path, nor throw out the slightest hint as to the treasure."
"I pass my word on it," said I, looking him in the face.
"So I will set my shining mark upon you."
He took from an inner pocket of his robe a tiny box, wrought out of a single ouch of emerald, and having opened it, he dipped his finger within, and struck it on me, from my chin and jowl round to the back of my neck.
"Get you gone," said he, "and return no more."
And he looked upon me terribly, and pointed to the trap-door. I stepped to the ladder, and began to climb. I was amazed. My thoughts run in a whirl. The power of the man's personality overshadowed me. One thing alone I perceived. I had found favor in his sight. But with the thought came another. I would build upon that favor to make intercession for Ambrose. I stayed my ascent and looked down. Dr. Coppicus stood observing me, and there was a strange, lamentable look in his eyes. "Sir," said I would speak with you."
"Well?"
asked he as I stopped. "Ambrose, your secretary?" I began and stuck again.
"Well?" said he. "What of Ambrose?"
"Spare him." I broke off, for my heart died at the terrors of his aspect, at the fearful anger that suddenly blazed in his eyes.
"Begone!"
cried he, and I threw myself up the remaining steps of the ladder, and staggered out into the wood. End of chapter 26.